Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome to RCI Mondays, time for another single car championship. And this time, something new with the Ginetta Cup. Tonight, we are bringing you round 4 from Snetterton. I'm your lead commentator for tonight, John Dalton, and alongside me is Kevin Boss. Behind the cameras, we have Ryan Mawson, and of course, next door to us, as always, the live stewards. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a wet race today, and thank you for that introduction, John. It's going to be very interesting today, especially as it's a single mate championship, so can't wait to see what happens today.
Yeah, certainly so. We've seen it time and time again, Kevin, with this kind of pack racing mentality that we've been seeing. You know, here at every single round so far, one driver makes a small mistake and all of a sudden you have an absolute train of drivers behind you. And the weather tonight looking very, very mixed indeed. We've seen some damp, we've seen some greasy, and maybe you might even see some wet weather as we come through to qualifying. But as we look to the left-hand side of your screen, of course, all the big names as usual. Last time out, this man here, Christoph Verstappen, took a race victory at the Mountain, came clawing back through the field after an unfortunate beginning. Wolf Matuszka and Maximilian Wede also came in a close second and third, but more on the championship points later as we're about to flick over to qualifying. I'm going to ask you, Kevin, who is your money on today?
Ooh, difficult. Well, you can't really go away from Christoph Verstappen. He's been really strong this entire championship. But yeah, then you've also got the likes of Stewie Howman, who he's been a bit unlucky, but he's always up there near the front. And then, of course, you've also got Wede. So I think it could be any of those three, but anything can happen as we've seen in the previous rounds.
Yeah, certainly so, Kevin. And I think Benjamin Heilman is a good driver, to put your money onto as we tap into qualifying now. We do see the damp conditions, but yeah, Benjamin Heilman, bit of a dark horse. Until last time out, he was the only driver to have set a fastest lap and won a race in the same kind of, two-race format. I believe Zolder was where he clinched that one, but definitely a driver to keep your eye on. And of course, Tor Zidlo as well, a driver that signed up pretty late to the championship. Definitely another one to be keeping your eye out on. But as everybody streams out around the circuit, tonight we do have 27 cars in attendance, which is of course a little less than the beginning of the season. Numbers do tend to kind of drop, especially with a circuit like Snetterton. I don't know how you feel, Kevin, but I'm not particularly a fan of this circuit. It's just a very, very awkward circuit in general.
It is quite technical, but it is also flowing. And I think we'll see quite a lot of overtakes where people just get their turning in wrong or just their brake marker wrong. That's where we'll probably get a lot of overtakes. You still have that long straight at the back towards bomb hole. So there's still quite something that can happen here. And actually, once I clicked with this track, I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, it is certainly like one of those tracks similar to Kyalami, where on the face of it, it looks like a very awkward circuit, kind of very, you know, very awkward apexes, some of them blind, some of them you can't quite work out where you need to be at any given time. But once you do learn it, like you say, Kevin, it is certainly a circuit that does click. LFM racing it a few weeks, or last month I think it will probably be now, as we ride on board with this man here, Benjamin Howman, the dark horse, as we take a lap around Snetterton, coming down the centre straight towards Riches. A little dab on the brakes, down a couple of gears, normally a 4th gear corner in the dry, of course the wet. You can see Benjamin Howman there working the wheel, be very careful on the outside curbs, and now up towards turn 2, the Montreal hairpin. Some drivers tend to take a very tight hugging line to shorten the corner. Some drivers take a late apex to try and get the slingshot out of the corner down towards turn 3, Palmer. Very late apex, very odd kind of corner again. More late the apex, the better. You can jump on the power nice and early, and Stewie, of course, keeping his car off those curbs. A lot of the AstroTurf runoff is going to be absorbing all the moisture tonight, so you're not going to be wanting to dip wheels onto any kind of painted surface, because you will be breaking traction. Now coming through Agostini, very tight hairpin towards Hamilton. Again, a very awkward corner. Once that tyre bail goes on the inside, judging your apex can be very strange indeed. Now up to Oggies. Everything kind of looks a little bit similar here at Snetterton. Very slow corner, very kind of, you know, good chances for making passes, and now up to Williams. This is going to be the crucial corner that you want to nail, because you have a long drag down the Bentley straight towards the bridge of Brundle and Nelson, and this is going to feel like an absolute eternity in this little Ginetta with a V6 engine, of course. Very short gear ratios, going to suit itself very well to Snetterton. Stewie very late on the upshift there, now tipping it in to Brundle. Hard on the brakes again for Nelson. Very easy to overcook this corner, run yourself too deep, and there we go. We see Stewie touching the curbs there, getting big sideways action out of Nelson through the bomb hole now towards the penultimate corner of Coram. This corner feels like it goes on forever and ever. You pitch it in, you keep it, turn right, little dab of opposite lock, and then you want to get it nice and tight so you can brake in a straight line for the final corner of Murray's. Now coming out of there, Stewie running all over the curb, not going to be very good for traction towards the line, and once again a very long run indeed as Stewie comes across the line. Our very own Benjamin Howman here crosses the line to take a 2-minute 1.5, immediately beaten by Mikael Sundström with a 2-minute 9, of course, fresh from the FIA Motorsport Games just the other week, representing Team Sweden. And Tor Zidlo now to provisional pole as well. Very competitive times, Kevin.
Yeah, it's all very close, as we've seen through the entire championship. It always takes, especially in these conditions, all the drivers a little bit to get their eye in. But once they do, you see all the distances just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I also think the rain remaining the same as it is, and with the track damp, the longer we go, the faster the times will be, and yeah, the closer it'll get.
Yeah, certainly so. Anyone not familiar to ACC, of course, you can see the weather in the top right-hand corner. You see the current time, you see then the time in 10 minutes and the time in 30 minutes. So we're going to have this kind of light drizzle that's going to keep the track kind of damp throughout. I wonder if we see anyone indeed taking the gamble with dry tyres. I believe everybody is going to be on wets for the provisional time, of course. GT4, no tyre warmers. However, with little standing water, the wets are going to heat up very well indeed. And this man here, Jordan Daly, representing Just Gamers, is back from a slight break when his hardware, I believe he had some pedal issues a couple of weeks ago at the Zolder round, which put him out of contention there, but a very fast fix indeed. Now sees Daly back in the fight for the championship, although way down the order, but of course we will come to championship standings later.
Yeah, as we now see Daly turn onto the Bentley straight, that long straight where you need to get your exit right. I think this is not as long as some of the straights as we had last week at Mount Panorama, also known as Bathurst. But yeah, like you said before, it does seem like it takes an eternity to get through. But then also to be very good on the brakes through Brundle and Nelson. And yeah, the long term and Coram, just very important to get that all correct.
Say one false move on the steering or the brakes or the accelerator can certainly see a big time loss for anyone. And of course, like we keep saying, Kevin, in pack racing, it is crucial to keep your momentum going. Even if it's a slight loss in speed or traction, it can certainly bring the train past you. But Jordan Daly, currently residing in P6, to the line, no improvement seen, I believe. This man here, Mikael Sundström, currently sits in P2. Not a world away from provisional pole of Torzidlo with a 2-minute .5. Only a small time gain to find for Mikael. And of course, again, Sundström is one of those drivers that just fires himself completely out of nowhere. 1 minute, you don't really notice where he is. A bit like Wolf Matuszka down in P7. We're going to see Wolf hopefully jump up the order a little bit later, but he does still remain in the pit lane in the pink performance, Ginetta. But all eyes on this man here, nearly on pace. Mikael Sundström. Nearly on pace is a bit of an understatement, I think, because normally, I don't know if you've ever raced with him, Kevin, but Sundström is always on the pace, I believe.
No, I can't say I've raced with Sundström because usually he's a couple of splits ahead of me. But yeah, we've seen in the previous 2 rounds where all of a sudden he's there. Same with Wolf Matuszka. Though I'm actually surprised that the likes of Jordan Daly and Wolf Matuszka are now in the pits, same as Andy Boardman. Because you'd think with these damp conditions, you want to have a couple more laps in, get your eye in to fully feel where the grip is, where the dry line is getting, and then also to warm up those tyres. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly so. In qualifying in these conditions, obviously looking towards the weather forecast, it's certainly not going to get any better. But again, it certainly isn't going to get any worse. So, like you say, unlimited tyre sets here in the Ginetta Cup. There's no real harm to even be running around on, race fuel. Even I would be certainly looking towards that to try and do a little stint and see obviously how the car progresses, maybe even over 10-20 minutes, and see what happens. Christian Lindgren was on a big improvement to the line, but a slight mistake sees him still residing down in, unfortunately, P18 for the Sim Brothers Racing Jurassic Park themed livery. There's a couple of cars in this style out today. Alan Manson, I believe, is somewhere as well. Jose Jimenez, a great driver, very far up the championship order. I was looking earlier at the standings provisionally before we came on air. And yeah, this guy could again be one of those dark horses that you just don't quite kind of expect, as we see him working the wheel onto the Bentley straight coming out of Williams. Long drag, hits 5th gear, waits for an eternity, it feels like, for 6th gear, and now snatches it just before he comes under the bridge, braking under the bridge, tipping it in, getting as close to the inside curb as you dare, then straightening up hard on the brakes for the second part of Nelson before I run to the bomb hole. I mean, back in the day, this corner used to be flat, and now it does seem to be a little bit of a lift in these conditions. A little dab of opposite lock as he comes out of the bomb hole as it crests out and over. Very early turning to Coram, very early indeed, nearly on the grass, but it does allow him to run a little bit wider to kind of straighten the car up that little bit earlier for the braking zone of Murray's. And now across the curve, the exit line, running to the finish line. Jose Jimenez, no real improvement on the Delta so far, but can he jump anywhere from 5th position? Crosses the line. Unfortunately, no improvement seen. Still resides in P5. Matthias Byron, again a silver driver who we saw do very well out last time at Mount Panorama, kind of kept his car clean, kept it out of the way. And obviously, anybody that's new, we do run 2 categories in this championship. We run a pro split seen by the whiteboards on the left of the number boards, and of course anybody with a grey or silver, should we say, background we denote as a silver driver. However, drivers are free to battle each other where they want. If you're the case of Matthias Byron last time out, he just said, you know what, you're a pro car, see you later, I want nothing to do with you. Whereas some other drivers we do see putting up a little bit of a fight here and there, Kevin.
Yeah, and it is nice to see because they do keep it clean most of the time anyway. But yeah, then to see those fights between the pro and silver drivers does show that there is a thin line between some of the pro and silver drivers. And even though it doesn't really matter for like an overall standing, which we don't have in this championship, it's still, especially for the silver drivers, is a good feeling to boost a bit of confidence. Know, like, yeah, every now and then I can beat those pros.
Yeah, certainly so. And confidence is the key to the game in racing. I'm sure you feel the same, Kevin, when you've raced in the past. You make a little mistake, it knocks your confidence, then kind of all of a sudden you have this irrational fear in the back of your head of that corner, and then you can't quite grasp yourself again to kind of get the hammer down and get the pace through that corner. But Matthias Byron, looking down the timing board, looking quite good on his Delta. A slower Swedish car ahead, although Sim Brothers Racing are racing under 2 different liveries. Byron is under one of them, the non-kind of Jurassic Park themed car, as he comes towards the line. Currently resides P21, but no improvement seen from Byron.
Well, he did improve his time, but it didn't improve his standings. That's a bit of a shame. I'm actually surprised that we don't really see any improvements anywhere, or like it's maybe like 100th here or there. But you'd think with all these cars on track for all the time, there would be like some sort of dry line forming where they would be able to get more grip and be able to go a bit faster than they are.
Yeah, certainly so, Kevin. I think the drizzle is just enough to kind of keep the track that little bit damp and that little bit greasy. Obviously, just under 3 minutes to go. Wolf Matuszka crosses the line, jumps up a position to P6 with a 2-minute 1.377. Although another driver we were kind of expecting to see that a little bit higher. Obviously, very good show out at the first couple of opening rounds. But this man here, Maximilian Vede, again, virtual drivers by TX3. We've seen him, Kevin, you know, on the front row and at the front battling, especially last time out of Bathurst, but currently P10 in qualifying.
Yeah, and we see it with a couple of other drivers where they are a bit lower than usual. Like, okay, Verstappen's just gone up to P3, but like Andy Boardman, we usually see like fighting for pole position, but here we see him 7/10 off a pole. Yeah, it just looks like Marius has put in a hell of a lap there. But we do still see Vedi improving through Walpole and Coram. Let's see how he goes as he goes through Murray's. Bit of oversteer there, bit late, bit too much curb, I think. And yeah, there he has lost everything he gained. So it does seem like all these drivers are struggling, as we now do see an improvement for Daly.
Yeah, Jordan Daly now jumps himself up into P7, just behind Wolf Matuszka. Not too much separating those guys, but the exit curb of the last turn, Kevin, does seem to be retaining a lot of moisture. We saw Benjamin Heilmann on his, provisional, pace lap that he set after the opening lap, that there's not a lot of grip over there. And then we saw it again just now with which driver we were with Maximilian Vede. Sorry, complete mind blank there. Vede hit the curb and just bled away all the time. Nat Shirley, strong shower in the silver class, fires himself up into P15 just behind Richard Phillips. Great improvement there. And David Grunstrom in probably what is maybe one of my favorite liveries on the grid, the Valvoline liveried car. Looks great in the classic red, blue and white colours. Comes to the line. David Grunstrom does improve up into P21. Again, a regular driver we see here at RCI, constantly in the silver class, fighting amongst his peers, and it's great to see just under 40 seconds to go in this session. David Grunstrom will have another chomp at the bit, as we say. Albin Manson, Sim Brothers Racing, the other Jurassic Park kind of themed car that we see. And Kevin, I'm quite surprised we're not seeing people slipstreaming down at least Bentley Straight or Senna Straight to try and improve their time that little bit more. You know, you've got a couple of teammates up and down the grid, so it's very surprising nobody's thought of this.
Well, maybe they're just a bit too far on. Maybe they just want to have a little bit of space, like what's happening with Monson here. Like a tiny mistake, you shoot forward, or you go a bit too slow for the car behind and you bleed away all the time you've gained. So I think that might be a bit of the why we don't really see the close slipstream.
Yeah, it could be certainly some aero balance and, like you say, bleeding away time on exit curbs. But the checkered flag has dropped, so anybody yet to cross the line will now not get another stab at it. Nicholas Nordqvist, again, a driver we normally see a little bit higher than this. Maybe the damp conditions really catching these drivers out. P25 currently resides chasing to the line. Mattis Bayron just behind out of shot there. Nordqvist comes across the line and does improve indeed. Jumps ahead of Christian Lindgren, fellow Swede in the other Sim Brothers Racing car, and of course pulling over. Speaking of Christian Lindgren, here he goes to the line. Silver driver, but don't let that fool you. Can he improve at all? Comes across the line, does improve. Good improvement there, just behind Phil Roberts. P17 overall, as we see Ted Edwards sat sideways across the start finish straight. Not sure what happened there, but David Grunstrom, again, another Swede. There's a lot of Swedes in this championship, I'm feeling, but David Grunstrom, number 6, hits the curb very, very heavily indeed. Runs far too wide. I believe that's probably going to be a track limits, and his lap destroyed. But Christoph Verstappen currently sits in P3. Coming through Coram up towards Murray's. A few of the cones have taken victim. Avoid the curb on the outside, please, Christoph, as he does. Very straight exit out of the corner, cycling up the gears towards the line. Currently resides P3, straightens it towards the pit wall to get the shortest run that he can. Crosses the line, but no improvement on position. P3 does improve to a 201.152, but not enough to jump him anywhere. And this man here, our dark horse, RCI, staff member Benjamin Heilman. All of the exit curb there looks a little bit squirrely and wiggles the wheel in frustration, more than likely invalidated his lap, and Matthew Kingston Lee follows him into the pits as well. Very awkward pit exit entry here. Going to be very interesting to see when the mandatory stops come in, Kevin.
Yeah, definitely. We might see some drivers do the early pit stop as before, though, like you said, with the awkward entry here, you need to be careful on the brakes, not to go too late. Otherwise, you will slam yourself into the wall and you will grant yourself a hefty repair time.
Yeah, certainly something you don't want to be doing, nor running up the back of your opponent. However, Torzidlo takes pole from Mikael Sundström and Christopher Strapen. Andy Boardman in P4, Jimenez P5, and Wolf Matuszka rounds out your top 6. And speaking of all those big names at the top, we are, of course, going to go over to our championship standings. And we do, like we say, in qualifying, we do run a pro and a silver championship. So here is how your pro lineup currently resides. Christopher Strapen with 39 points. Wolf Matuszka follows close behind with 37. Jose Jimenez and Maximilian Vede joint with 25 points. Benjamin Heilman and Marius Torzidlo with 23.5 and 22.5. Just 1 point separates them. Joe Dorber in P7 with 21. Mark Elgard, P8. A very good showing in Bathurst last time out. Andy Boardman joint P9 with Adam Dubil on 15. Rounding to page 2, Mikael Sundström, representative of Team Sweden in the FIA Motorsport Games. Late start to the season, of course, with prior commitments, finds himself with 15 points. Dario Barzaghi, I believe, who might have signed out of this championship for the Barless Esports team on 14.5. Daniel Jim on 13, joint with Albin Manson. Bart Matcher, our very own RCI staff member, on 12 points. Oliver Hagstrom Vigishu, the greatest name in sim racing, despite what Jesse Lee says, with Matthew Kingston Lee on 11. Jan Yo on 9. Nicholas Nordqvist on 4. Tom Shipston on 3. And Matthias Thornberg rounds out your top 20 on 2. Coming to the final page, Klawski on 1. Jordan Daly is a nil pointer, rounds out the final scorers. Chris Downing and Michael Races have unfortunately signed out. Moving over to the Silverfield now, Dominic Fekete on 36, championship leader, although I've not seen his name in the board tonight. Matthew Kingston Lee in P2 with 29, joint with Christian Lindgren. Conrad Jetson on 25, again joint with Ted Edwards, very own RCI staff member here as well. Nat Shirley 21.5 and Victor Nordqvist not far behind on 21. And now we have a three-way tie between David Grunstrom, Raphael Huell and Richard Phillips, all on 18 points. And Haranas not far behind on 17, joint again with Ethan Scott. Matt Stevens on 15, Matthias Byron on 13, Phil Roberts, another RCI staff member, on 10.5, Mike Redford with 9, and unfortunately Daniel Crimson, Martin Broiker and Yao Manso have signed out of the championship. Now coming to the grid, Kevin, it's looking very grey indeed, very overcast. Not the ideal weather that we want to be having. Looking to the forecast, the track is currently damp. Rain is decreasing in 10 minutes time, however, then increases again in 30 minutes time. So we're going to have a right curveball of weather, I feel, for this round.
Yeah, and it's really going to have the drivers have to think about their strategy. Like, are they going to change something with tire pressures? Maybe putting on a new set with it being then more wet after 30 minutes, with the track cooling down a bit, and then pressures also going down. Or are they just going to keep it like it is, don't take the tires, and go for it? So, yeah, it will be very interesting to see what they decide to do.
Yeah, certainly so. It's going to be a very mixed bag. You know, any of those that have played ACC will know that you can't simply adjust pressures in the pit stop. You do, unfortunately, have to take a whole new set of boots to be able to reset those pressures. So do you set them kind of, you know, on the little bit of a low side, thinking that they're going to stay in that kind of ideal window, but then when the rain comes in 30 minutes, they're going to drop severely? Or do you slightly overinflate them at the start, so when the rain comes in 30 minutes time, you're going to have that little bit more pressure. You're going to be able to lose that little bit more temperature to then bring the pressures back down into their operating window. Of course, any drivers you see on the grid currently with a yellow sidewall on the tyre that says Pirelli will of course be on dries, and anybody with no tyre markings, as we see a close-up here of Jordan Daly's car, you see the sidewall of the tyre there, no markings at all, does indicate a wet option. And looking up and down the grid, I'm not seeing any dry tyres so far from the front runners, but will we see any kind of curveballs coming in? I know the old ACC meta used to be overinflate your tyres to try and, you know, compensate for the pressure loss. And it did work until one of the patches. And then, of course, it did get patched out. And a very cursed livery once again, Kevin, the stuff of nightmares. And no, it is not Halloween this week. That was a few weeks ago. But again, a car you do not want to be seeing in your mirrors at all.
It still haunts me at night, that one.
I saw in EWC he ran a Lamborghini with a similar face on the front, and it's equally terrifying. Whatever you put on the front of any car that Janyo drives, it's just absolutely terrifying. And a less terrifying livery, Phil Roberts in the Parakeet car. Great to see, of course, custom liveries up and down the grid here at RCI. It does keep the field slightly alive and a little bit fresher than obviously what you would normally be seeing with in-game liveries with generic colours and the Pigeon car lastly pulls away from the grid. And a short rundown of the calendar here at the Ginetta Cup. We of course pack up from Snetterton today and we head back over to the Oceanic region for round 5 at Suzuka on the 21st of November before heading stateside for round 6 at Watkins Glen on the 28th of November, before wrapping it all up in England again at Donington Park on the 5th of December. And as we saw, the championship could not be closer, Kevin.
No, looking at what we saw before, a lot of people are on the same amount of points. Also at the top, you see Christopher Strepe and Wolf Matuszka, only 2 points separating them. And yeah, then a lot of people very close together. So you really don't want to make any mistake here. With regards to like going wide, maybe crashing, like missing your brake mark or anything like that. So yeah, it will be very interesting to see how they attack this race.
Indeed, certainly very interesting, and very interesting indeed is Ted Edwards' livery that he is sporting this month in the aid of Movember. Movember is, of course, an annual event involving the growing of mustaches during the month of November to raise awareness of men's health issues such as prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and, of course, men's suicide and mental health. Since 2003, Movember has funded more than 1,250 men's health projects around the world, challenging the status quo, shaking up men's mental health research, and transforming the way health services reach and support men in the world and the UK. Keen-eyed viewers will, of course, notice on the side of Ted Edwards' car, he has a pigeon with a little mustache on the side. You might see it as it comes past here. There we go. A little twizzly mustache either side. Great to see. Of course, with Katrina Scott's very artistic efforts once again going on to Ted's car. And it's great to see, obviously, mental health being supported in such a way these days. There's no more, negative stigma as there once was around it. And remember to check in all your friends very regularly, because it's always the quiet ones you must worry most about. But back to tonight's action. This man here, Marius Torzidlo, has of course managed to put the Carbon SimSport car on pole. Mikael Sundström following up in P2, Christopher Strapen, and we see him behind in P3, Andy Boardman P4, Jose Jimenez P5, and Wolf Matuszka P6. Very, very big names towards the front of the grid. Some super big names in top 10. And of course, a silver driver of Jetson in P9. Just to shake up the order that little bit more. Of course, Jetson is free to fight everybody up and down the grid as we now come towards the line, waiting for the green flag. Not a lot of spray coming off the cars. We see wipers ablaze, a few headlights. Rain is now increasing in 10 minutes and again in 30. So it's going to be a very interesting race as the green flag goes. Torzidlo gets a great run down into Riches. Mikael Sundström there tucking in single file. P3 Christopher Strapen keeps it very close indeed. Jose Jimenez up the inside of Wolf Matuszka. Everybody being very, very cautious through turn 1, which is great to see. But looking very close here as a bump from behind fires another car into the back. I believe Benjamin Heilman, possibly Jan Yo, can't quite make it out from the helicam here. But Mark Elgaard in P12 does seem relatively unfazed by this. And other than the bump in the back, Kevin, a relatively clean start as we head into Palmer down to Agostini.
Yeah, very clean indeed. We did see some cars go a bit wide into turn one. It was especially the ones on the outside, but very clean indeed. As we now see them actually go through Agostini in towards the awkward turn of Hamilton. With board now with Andy Boardman, only 4/10 behind Michael Sundstrom, and Verstappen actually dropped back a bit. Oh no, sorry, that was just the time board not updating quick enough for us. But yeah, very close. Then now we get to that very important corner of Williams onto the Bentley straight, where we can hope to see some slipstreaming, and hopefully they can outbrake someone going into Brundle and Nelson. But as we see Verstappen here, he's taking the clean air line, not wanting to be behind anyone else. And that's actually interesting, because you'd think you'd want the slipstream here.
Yeah, you think you want the slipstream indeed. Maybe drivers already heading offline to try and catch some of the, standing water that might be out there. But Christoph Verstappen, you are right, was in P3, Kevin, as we rounded turns 1 into 2, and has found himself now behind Andy Boardman, a position we're much more used to Boardman, seeing him in P3 towards the top of the grid. Jan Yo, for people in chat, can confirm, Jamie DH, he is here, he is racing in the absolutely terrifying faced livery, of course. Maximilian Vede, if I was that guy, look, Vede straight out of the way, sees the face, and he's like, I'm not looking at this face in my mirror much longer, I'm coming into the pit. So all eyes on Vede, your first driver down pit road, of course. Anybody with an orange number 1 next to their name is yet to take a pit stop. The only stipulation we do have here tonight is 1 litre of fuel. Tyres are completely up to the driver. So Vede hedging his bets. The rain is on set now for the next hour or so, and he's going to be very, very settled indeed. Very close move. Joe Dorber, we saw in the mirror there, nearly swiping the back of Jan Yo's car, wanting to try and find a way past. As I said in qualifying, Kevin, 2 very different lines through that hairpin can result in those kind of very close moments you do get.
Yeah, and then it's especially good for the driver behind to keep an eye what the guy in front is doing, that they don't end up rear-ending them. Like you said, when you do those different lines, because then on exit, Joe Dorber would have had a faster exit, but then you need to be careful not to punt someone else off. As of now, except for that little punt that we saw going towards turn 2, it's been very clean as Bart Mathias getting very close to Lindgren in front. But yeah, really good racing so far.
Yeah, super clean, unlike we saw at Zolder, where we saw a record-breaking number of incidences, DQs, you name it, we saw it. And we are back to the 1-hour kind of endurance format of this championship. But Bart Matcher, indeed, getting very close to Christian Lindgren. Bart Matcher, one of our RCI staff members. Once again, it's great to see staff do get a break occasionally, and we do occasionally get to have some fun and partake in our own events, as he closes right up onto the back of Christian Lindgren, coming through Brundle and Nelson, look much more confident through the sweepers and on the brakes, gained a big amount of time through the bomb hole as well. Car looking very stable, working the steering wheel into quorum. It feels like you're forever turning right here, and of course in the dirty air of the car ahead you can suddenly lose grip very randomly. I did end up with a similar incident in GT3, as we saw Christian Lindgren there taking all of the exit curb, and that slowed him right up, and it's allowed Bart Matcher to come alongside. And of course Richard Phillips in the RPMS SimSport car is now getting involved as well, side by side down into turn 1. Richard Phillips with the overlap on Christian Lindgren, overlaps Bart Matcher, but then runs himself too deep, and this allows Christian Lindgren back up the inside again. So just as we thought the move was done, sealed and dusted, Christian Lindgren back on the counter-attack, and Joe Dorber running a bit wide there, gives the inside up to Mark Elgaard, and Elgaard finds himself jumping up into P11.
Yeah, very close going into turn 1 there. Good job by all drivers there for keeping it clean, especially the car on the outside, knowing that he had to take a wider line. Almost went a bit too wide, but it did make him lose his spot there against Lindgren. But yeah, nice to see them all keep it clean, keep it safe, and keep the fighting close and good.
Yeah, certainly so. We now see, obviously, Joe Dorber and Mark Elgaard, but the fight they had through the hairpin has, of course, allowed Bart Matcher, Christian Lindgren, Richard Phillips, Matt Stevens and possibly Bayron is just a bit too far back to be involved in the train. But this is the kind of pack racing mentality we kind of see, where one car ahead makes a little mistake, and then all of a sudden a train of 4 or 5 Ginettas are all of a sudden completely all over you, and you have absolutely nowhere to go at all, as Nicholas Nordqvist now sizing up Matthias Thornberg in the Pink Panther Racing. Little Pink Panther there on the right hand side. Don't get confused with Wolf Match's Pink Performance car as they head under the bridge into Brundle. Nicholas Nordqvist with the inside makes up a position, but now has to get it stopped for Nelson. Does run it a little bit wide all over the curb. We see the slip there, but the car behind of Thornberg running equally as wide, so hampering both their exits. And Nicholas Nordqvist gets the move down. Big wiggle coming out of the bomb hole there. You really need to be avoiding the curbs here tonight, as we see Jan Yo with a big armful of opposite lockers. I'm talking about avoiding curbs. He does exactly what I don't want him to do.
Yeah, we see it now all over the field. Everyone taking a little bit too much of the corners, getting onto the exit curbs, and then just having to correct their steering. As we now see Lindgren very close to the back of Bart Matzia. Still able to keep that inside line and not the white line as Phillips had to do the lap before. But yeah, you really see the need here to stay off the curb, stay off the painted parts in order to maintain the grip levels.
And we see it time and time again in Formula One, especially when, you know, the rain comes down. All drivers just tend to avoid any kind of painted surface, like you say, Kevin, white lines, curbs, AstroTurf, you know, the kind of grassy rumble strip beyond the rumble strip, if you like. And it does really upset these cars. Of course, the Ginetta, a very light platform. And of course, eagle-eyed viewers in our chat is noticing rain is now beginning to increase, and the next 10 minutes it shall be increasing. However, starts backing off again in 30 minutes time. So strategy absolutely wide open. We see a couple of early pitters down the bottom of the board there. Joe Dorber, Maximilian Vede, among others. And we're going to be having to watch those guys very closely indeed to see if they can get the undercut done. Although, Kevin, you see time and time again in the Ginetta Cup, everybody likes to run as late as they can. And we saw it last time out on Mount Panorama. Yeah,
and I think especially in conditions like these, which are very changeable, you don't want to go too early and set yourself in a set strategy. Because as you can already see, rain will increase, it will decrease, it might even dry up at the end. So the guys who go for the long haul could be in a perfect position. Like, if it goes to dry tyres, then they're in a prime position to take, well, one of the highest positions there. Well, the guys who've already pitted, they'll have to do a second pit stop, which will really slow them down.
Yeah, going to be very good indeed if the track does dry out enough to warrant dry tyres, because of course 30 minutes from now will put you at about 20 minutes to go. You come in, grab some dry tyres. Will you be able to make up as much time as those that have opted to stay on the wet? And then by that point going to be not a lot of tread blocks left, and they're going to be absolutely scorching hot from the lack of standing water on the circuit. However, time will tell, but as we look towards the back of Jose Jimenez here, Wolf Matuszka finds a tiny gap and they collide on exit. Jimenez tries to go defensive, but Wolf Matuszka already alongside. Stewart's going to be very eagerly looking at that one from all the replays, and this now of course allows Benjamin Heilmann into the fight as well in the black and yellow RCI car.
Yeah, very close. I think Wolf Matuszka might have actually understeered a little bit into the rear of Jimenez. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what the stewards think of that, because they have more angles than we had. We only saw the one angle. But yeah, because of that, the pack is squashed together, and that's getting very tight through these couple of corners. I'm very interested to see how they will exit onto the Bentley Straight and how they will attack Brundle.
Yeah, certainly getting super dicey, as we keep saying. One car makes a mistake, then all of a sudden 4 or 5 Ginettas are swarming all over the back of you. And prime example here with Jose Jimenez and Wolf Matuszka. That little collision has now allowed Benjamin Heilmann, Jordan Daly, Konrad Jetson and Jan Yo into the fights. We see drivers darting all the way to the left to try and pick up as much kind of water, I guess, as they can. Maybe drivers already feeling the temperatures in these Pirelli tyres getting a little bit too hot. They're just trying to find that little bit of standing water just to cool them off enough to keep them in that kind of workable windows. Fabian Schmidberger, our resident kind of tactician, if you like, at RCI, knows a lot about the mechanics of ACC. Any questions, fire them into chat at him if you do have them, because he will be able to answer them. But he says, sure, you want to avoid high temperatures from the beginning, especially since the rain is increasing. The drivers have maybe just over pressurized their tires that little bit extra, as we were saying on the grid walk, just to get them, you know, out of that kind of window of being too low pressure. They're going to start graining, and then you're going to not have any longevity towards the end of the race. But Jose Jimenez now thinks better about sitting in that train, pulls himself out of it into the pit lane as we see him tumble down the order. Again, another driver to watch out for. 49 minutes just over still to go. Conditions changing and people already pitting.
Yeah, and like I said before, I'm actually surprised that they're pitting that early, seeing as the rain is going to get less after half an hour. Anything could happen in the time period after that. But yeah, still seeing this close pack here in front. Jordan Daly, Bart Matje here as well in another pack with Phillips, Lindgren and Elgard just in front. There's a little bit of a gap between them and the pack ahead, but as we saw before, only one little thing needs to happen, and these four are right at the back of the pack in front.
Yeah, Bart Matje getting super close to the back of Christian Lindgren's car, coming through the hairpin there of Agostini into Hamilton. The gap has slightly opened up that little bit more as they come now into Oggies before coming into Williams for the back straight. Nicholas Nordqvist from one sim brother to another is on the back of this pack here, headed up by Matthias Bayron. Phil Roberts, you see there, second in queue, Matt Stevens, and then Nicholas Nordqvist with Matthias Thornberg and David Grunstrom looking to get in on the action. We have a little bit of a Swede train here. All cars other than two people in this train are Swedish nationality, so maybe the Swedes might start working together as we see the slipstream now of Nicholas Nordqvist. See how effective it is down into Brundle and Nelson. Not particularly effective in these conditions, it seems, with the Ginettas as well. With pack racing, obviously Phil Roberts is going to be giving a little bit of a tow to Matt Stevens ahead, and of course Nicholas Nordqvist is going to be in the wake of Matt Stevens. So no real drivers gaining. You kind of need that car ahead to be in clear air, to be, you know, punching a hole in it so your Ginetta can zoom up to the back of it and sweep on past. And lots of steering wheel movement through Coram into Murray's. Car's looking very kind of loose on the edge as we see drivers still taking the curbs despite what we're saying up in the box here.
Yeah, they are still taking a lot of it. It might just be that they're slightly missing the brake markers every time because they're a bit too focused at the car in front. As we see a big slide there from Bart Matje as the exits turn one, sorry. Yeah, he's lost them. It's still very close to Lindgren in front, but I'm actually surprised because Bart Matje was in front of Lindgren before, so I really wonder what happened there. But as they're now going through the next corner, we can also see Phillips very close to the back of them. So let's keep an eye on this. This is interesting.
Yeah, Richard Phillips, no stranger to battling. We saw him last time out in the Deutschland Masters in the Mercedes with an absolute dominant performance against the pro guys, of course being a silver rated driver here at RCI. And no different here, Bart Matje kind of finds himself in a silver sandwich. So although Matje could get ahead of Lindgren, he does unfortunately have to pass Elgard before he has a shot at a championship point gain. And Phil Roberts now silver on silver action. Phil with Matthias Bayron ahead of him. Phil has been really progressing his driving recently at RCI. I competed with him at EWC at Watkins Glen this Saturday, and his team did fantastically well, I believe with a top 10 finish. And Phil, of course, now finds himself battling with Matthias Bayron, not too far behind the Richard Phillips fight, as Nicholas Nordqvist now comes under fire from Matt Stevens behind in the RPMS Sim Sport. Stevens to the outside, thinks better of it, breaks out a little bit early just to get the apex of the corner to set himself back up again for Nelson. But very smart driving from these guys. Of course, still 45 minutes to go, just over, and you've got a long time to wait yet. And everybody here at the front, Kevin, is getting a bit sandwiched.
Yeah, very close together. So at this point especially, any little mistake will have massive effects for the entire pack, with everyone else not too far behind, as we can now see them go through turn one of Riches, see if they can keep the grip. Every little bit of steering correction just to keep the car going straight, as we are now seeing a little bit of spray on the windshield as they're battling this close with the rain increasing.
Yeah, I was going to say conditions certainly looked that little bit wetter out there, Kevin, and it's interesting to see the driving positions possibly of some of these drivers too. You see Konrad Jetson here with no wiper on in these conditions. Of course, ACC doesn't simulate kind of wiper smear. Essentially, it will just clear the raindrops. So kind of suggests that Jetson might be racing in kind of, hood view or, bumper cam possibly. As Jordan Daly, wiper ablaze, definitely driving in the cockpit view indeed. And sandwiched at the back of this kind of pro field, we've got Jetson on the back of 7 pro guys looking ahead. Obviously, like we said earlier, pro guys are open to fight, although the silver driver of Jetson does have a nice buffer between himself and P2, who is Christian Lindgren. He has Jan Yo and Mark Elgaard between them. So, of course, even if Jetson loses 2 positions, he still retains that lead in the silver class. So keep your eyes on him. Nicholas Nordquist now getting on to the back of Phil Roberts and Bayron. Possibly the Sim brothers might be working together here. Obviously, Matis Bayron is a friend under the banner of Sim Brothers Racing, so maybe he can hold Phil Roberts up, but I don't think there's any need as Nicholas Nordquist looks super close to the back of Phil Roberts' parakeet car as we see side-by-side action once again down into Brundle and Nelson. Still side-by-side, elbows out Nicholas Nordquist, possibly understeering slightly, looking to give Phil Roberts the position back, wondering where the parakeet's gone, and there it is, it appears in front of him, and unfortunately he's losing a position out to Matt Stevens, and of course Matthias Thornberg in the Pink Panther car goes up the inside into the bomb hole.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a shame that he didn't see that the parakeet car was going straight on because he couldn't turn in anymore. Nice to see that he wanted to give the position back, but at that point, not knowing where the parakeet was, yeah, he just lost 2 positions, and that's a bit of a shame. As we see Christopher Strepe trying to get past Andy Boardman, trying to get the better exit here to maybe have a look into turn 2. Just seems to be a little bit too far, maybe trying a bit too much. Actually, I'm completely wrong. That was turn 2. That's now going to go through Palmer up towards Agostini. So, yeah, very close everywhere. And, yeah, you can see that's one of the things that we saw and said before. One little mistake and what can happen immediately with these pack races.
Yeah, certainly so. I'm finding it very hard indeed myself to differentiate all the corners here at Snetterton, even being a British guy that should know this circuit. Everything kind of looks the same when you look at it through the TV cam pictures that we're seeing here on YouTube. And Konrad Jetson still finds himself sandwiched now between Jan Yo and Christian Lindgren has found a way past Mark Elgaard. So Lindgren is technically next in line, although Jan Yo is on the back of Jetson, looking to make a move up the order. Of course, if he passes Jetson, then he does catch the back of Daly. That is more championship points for Jan Yo as we see the slipstream kicking in here. 2 cars you can just about make out by the mirrors and the spoiler. Jan Yo looks to the inside. Jetson far enough ahead to be able to cut the nose off and take the racing line and keeps it very clean through Brundle and Nelson. And of course, rolling over to this week's events here at RCI. Monday, of course, we find ourselves with Ginetta Cup. Tuesday this week, we do unfortunately find ourselves with an empty slot, as we do in Wednesday, because our team championship wrapped up last week with Team URL taking victory in GT3 Pro from Forza Italia PLE Racing and Kitty Litter Racing in 3rd. Overall in silver, Race Ventura took a dominating win from Dungeon Racing and Withers. Thursday this week begins our new championship at Suzuka for round 1 of GT4 and TCX multi-class. Friday rolls into round 8 for the finale at Nürburgring GP for our GT Sprint Challenge. Jaroslav Honzik extended his lead over Samir Foch and Valentin Barrier at Brands Hatch with a solid first place, 345 points to the 331 of Foch. Still all to play for in that one. Of course, tune in to RCI TV Friday for Jesse Lee and Ryan Mawson casting that one on our schedule. And Saturday this week also begins our Night Owl winter break with 3 circuits voted for by the community, with round 1 beginning at Bathurst. And speaking of Bathurst, of course, the 12-hour event we have here on RCI on the 26th of November, GT3 cars at the mountain. Need we say more? Grab yourself some friends, pick a car and prepare for the 12 hours of awesome racing. And of course, sign-ups have opened as well for our random track championship here at RCI, with tracks chosen at random on the day of the race. The playing field is leveled. just turn up and drive. And looking at the entry list, Kevin, there's already some great car choices, including my favourite, the Aston Martin V12 Vantage. And that begins on Wednesday, the 23rd of November.
I must say I haven't really looked at the championship yet with all the car choices, but it's nice to see the V12 being pulled out of the garage again. So we see a little twitch there from Daly as Jan Yo tries to get up the inside. Seems like he's done it. Going into Williams. Oh, correction. Like everything is the same. He has to go into Bumhall and Coram, the long right-hander. I really thought Jan had that one in the bag, but doesn't seem like he'd done it. Though Daly goes wide here. Jan goes on the throttle and goes past John Daly.
Exactly what we're talking about, Kevin, with those curbs. You saw as soon as Daly hit the curb, he just lost all momentum, and Jan Yo just propelled himself past, of course, bringing Jetson with him in the silver class. And going back to our calendar breakdown, you can, of course, sign up and pre-qualify if needed for any of these events at any time by visiting racerci.com. And Richard Phillips, no stranger to racerci.com, signing up all the time in the RPMS SimSport car, finds himself glued to the back of Bart Macho. Too much grass on the exit, finds himself with a big sideways moment, did very well to keep it out the barrier. Let's ride on board, wrestling the wheel already, hits the curb, double opposite lock, sends himself wide, clips the curb and the AstroTurf, and then of course the grasses are very abrupt at the end. Did very well to keep that car out of the barrier. I've had accidents like that in the dry, and it's hard enough to save it in the dry, let alone in the wet. So kudos to Mr. Phillips on that one.
Yeah, it was great. Part of car control. Like, okay, he lost it at the start, but then in order to catch it like he did, that is just a great example of how well you can control a car like this. And like you said, if you spin like that in the dry, it's already difficult. To do it in the wet just shows how good that save was. As we're now looking at Jetson trying to get towards the back of Jan Yo, as we've also seen Christopher Strepe and John Daly having gone into the pits. At this point, I'm actually quite surprised with looking at the weather report now in forecast. It's getting a bit less. As you can already see, at 30 minutes, it's just the double cloud with a bit of rain. So that means it might turn into greasy. They might have gone just a bit too early now.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast the weather can change, and like you say, Kevin, it is decreasing in 30s. We see Christopher Strapen there hitting all of the standing water on the right-hand side of the circuit, way off the racing line to try and do some cooling on those Pirellis, maybe overworking them a little bit. He's obviously no stranger to fighting back through the pack. Is currently first on the road in our kind of, provisional pit stoppers. Still 14, we'll call it 15 if you count David Grundstrom, cars ahead of him yet to take their stop. And we saw it last time out at Mount Panorama. Verstappen pitted earlier than everybody else. Everybody kind of chose to dive in the last 1 minute or so of the pit window. And we saw Verstappen take the lead as a result. So pit's kind of like in the middle ground, almost just over, and then ends up putting in a hard charging kind of stint to see how much he can claw back. As we see, David Grundstrom has now also entered the pit lane, maybe thinking it is time to cut myself out of this kind of pack and find some clean air. But Wolf Matuszka finds himself up into P4. A little bit of a gain there. We did see him down into P6 and 7 at the beginning, so great to see Wolf on the comeback. But Andy Boardman, can we just say, great drive from him, Kevin.
Yeah, definitely being P3. It does also help that some of the other front runners have already pitted, but still, great driving from him so far. As we've had some incidents come in from the stewards. There's a lap 1, turn 1 incident involving car 1 and a 225. 5 seconds for car number 1, avoidable contact, which you can see on the screen once it's in view. Though that's for the car 54, we'll get to that. Another incident, lap 1, turn 1 involving the 555 and the 1 drive-through for car 1. Car 1 is 1 at turn 1. It's the 225 twice before spinning and taking out the 555. Number 1 doesn't hold his brakes, position not returned. So quite a lot happened for the car number 1 there in first turn. Then also on lap 1, turn 4, incident between the 225 and the 54. No further action, minor contact. Lap 2, turn 6 between the 404 and the 33. No further action, minor contact. And on lap 3, turn 2, involving car 137 and the 54. 5 seconds for car 54 as he hits the 173 on the side when both cars go deep into the corner. 173 have to go off throttle to control the car, and 54 gains the position, which is the 5-second penalty you see on your screen now.
Yeah, stewards certainly busy as always, but luckily not as busy as they were at Zolder. A big shout out to those in the box tonight: AJ, Daniel, Martin, Andreas, Connor, Glenn, and Will Stevenson. As we see Jordan Daly with some lawn mowing through Brundle and Nelson. Very well held, jumped a lot of ground, it looks like, on Matthew Kingston Lee. Not really sure. I think it was Matthew Kingston Lee ahead anyway. It could be Bayron looking at the back of it. Come alongside, it is Matthew Kingston Lee indeed, full yellow car. Jumps up the inside and then just kind of outbrakes himself. Scandi flicks it onto the grass and then finds himself quite a way ahead of Matthew Kingston Lee, and position has been returned, rightfully so, by Jordan Daly. Kudos to him for admitting where that went wrong. Allows Matthew Kingston Lee back through, so Stewart's probably going to look at that one and maybe have a little bit of a giggle at their expense, Kevin.
Yeah, it's like well held, but still, he made the mistake going in too deep, not making the corner, trying to go for the overtake on Kingston Lee. You'd hope he'd at least lessen the gap that they had, just so either give the position back or make sure that Kingston Lee is back at his rear, just to take away the advantage he gained there. As we see Stevens go a bit wide with the parakeet very close behind, trying to overtake there on the outside as they go on towards the Bentley straight. See who has the better exit. Looks like Matt Stevens had a good exit, but he loosed out a bit there with Roberts and Christopher Stoper right behind him.
Yeah, Verstraper certainly looking to make moves up on everybody. Phil Roberts maybe very sensibly allows Christopher Verstraper through, hoping that he's going to catch the back of Matt Stevens and shoehorn open the door. And before you know it, you've got Verstraper alongside, and then all of a sudden you've got the parakeet coming through as well. So might be a little bit of a smart move from Phil Roberts if he can stick with these guys. Of course, Verstraper there shoehorns open the door. Stevens goes wide, and look in the back. This does allow Phil Roberts up the inside through Coram. Of course, becomes the outside for Murray's looking into the back of the shot. Side by side still. Phil Roberts, unfortunately, on the outside over the curb. And this does allow Maximilian Vede to, of course, get involved as well. And he's going to want to get past as fast as he can because Christopher Verstraper is essentially jumped him on the road for the pit stop position.
Yeah, and he just seems to get stuck now behind Stevens. It's a bit of a shame for Vede. He did start a bit further down on the grid, but having that early stop has launched him up the field compared to Verstraper. But yeah, now being stuck behind the slower car of Stevens is hampering his march forwards on the grid.
Yeah, certainly not something you want to be seeing when you've pitted early. You do want to try and find your way in as much clean air as you quite possibly could. And even looking at the pit stop timers, we do have some access to this on our live timing data. Christopher Verstraper's pit stop from pit in to pit out, of course, 31.611. And Maximilian Vede's stop, 30 seconds flat nearly with a 30.004. So a full, 1.6 between them. And, Verstappen has more than, a good 2 seconds now between himself and Vede. So possibly Vede getting very unlucky in traffic on his fight back with Christoph Verstraper. But you now see that gap that Verstraper has opened up. Big sideways action coming on to the Bentley straight. This is great car control from the Belgian driver, and no stranger to, of course, winning races. Currently resides in P13 overall. Does have a couple of silver cars to gain. Thornberg ahead, obviously, with a 5-second penalty. Is going to be taking that in his pit stop. So we're going to see Thornberg, unfortunately, tumble way down the order. But everything's starting to kind of thin out and spread out a little bit now, Kevin. We kind of get to that point where we can kind of relax and just enjoy the cars, kind of, all the sideways action that's happening. I have heard through the grapevine that apparently Jan Yo is very good at drifting in a Ginetta.
I have seen it happen. Was on the last race of the Thursday Championship. He was already secured this position, couldn't really change it a lot, and he found himself in P3 in that race, and he decided to have a bit of fun, decided to drift around every corner at Misano. That was a joy to behold. So maybe if he's like, okay, I'm safe, we might see a bit of that here. I'd love to see it once again, because that was an epic display of car control.
Yeah, definitely so. We see him just in the back of the shot there with the cursed kind of mouth and eyes on the front of the car as Benjamin Heilmann looks to the back of Wolf Matuszka. Again, a sight that we have seen time and time again in this championship. But Joe Dorber now on his charge back through the field did find himself up into like P11, I believe, at the beginning. Now finds himself down in P19, stuck behind Albin Manson in the Sim Brothers racing car. Halfway mark reached with 30 minutes to go, just under. Pit window still open for another 28 minutes just over, and we still have quite a few cars still to come into the pit lane, including this man here, Richard Phillips, on the back of Bart Matcher. Bart is, not fighting for position at the moment with these guys overall in class. Bart is of course in the pro class, and he does need to catch Jan Yo, who has two silver cars, I beg your pardon, between him of Jetson and Lindgren. Again, everybody still yet to make a stop, so possibly, depending how late everybody's planning to leave it and how the track evolves when the rain backs off, we could see some big gains and some big losers. And Richard Phillips looking super racy behind Bart Matcher. Jan Yo here. Again, Curse Livery finds himself coming into the pit lane. Very tight entrance there. And of course follows Jetson behind, I believe, in the Carbon Simsport car. Now Richard Phillips and Bart Matcher coming through Coram into Murray's, keeping it very clean indeed. Let's see, Phillips again all over the exit curb. Not going to be good for traction. Matcher taking that much kind of tighter line, keeps himself off the curb. But Benjamin Heilmann does appear to be catching the back of Wolf Matuszka, Kevin.
Yeah, he seems to be edging closer a little bit lap by lap. It's only going to wait and see if he's going to be able to make that final move. Maybe he can do this lap going onto the Bentley straight. But yeah, you see this race, like most cars keep it very clean, very tight, and actually seeing them race this close, it was a bit like Lindgren and Ted Edwards last week at Mount Panorama, where they're going up the mountain, they were switching positions left, right, and center. So we do know that these drivers can perfectly race side by side, going through each corner. So yeah, really excited to see what they can do here. So we're now getting towards Williams and onto the Bentley straight, and let's see if Benjamin Heilmann can actually grab Wolf Matuszka's place.
Yeah, Benjamin Heilmann looks certainly very, very good indeed through Sector 1, and does look like he's got the slightly better run out of Williams onto the Bentley straight. You see the gap closing and closing to Wolf. Benjamin looking to the outside in Brundle, which would of course become the inside into Nelson if he can get it alongside. A little bit of a late lunge there, and contact again. Wolf Matuszka straightens up, manages to keep the position, and I think Heilmann is going to have to maybe back out of this one, although the stewards are going to be looking at this very closely, thinking if that tap didn't happen, Benjamin, you wouldn't have gained a position. So keep your eyes peeled in the stewards chat, Kevin, because I think they're going to be all over this one. I think Benjamin should return the place if he doesn't want to be frowned upon by the stewards.
Yeah, I think so, because you did see him just let go of the throttle to let Matuszka ahead, but not enough, because Matuszka was still struggling to get the car straight and going when Benjamin went for the overtake again. So if he's smart, he's going to let him go, let him through here, but I think that would have already happened. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I could have a look at what else has come through for incidents as we keep looking here at Jan Yo getting to the back of, is that Roberts?
Mark Elgaard, I believe.
Oh yeah, Elgaard, yeah. So that looks, yeah, that's Mark Elgaard. So yeah, Elgaard still has to pit, so I'd expect they might want to let him go as it's a silver car. You don't want to really get into that fight at that point, in my opinion, but we'll see what happens there. As we got an incident on lap 5.10.2 involving the 122 and the 25. A warning for the 25 for forcefully overtaking the 122, but position returned. Lap 5.10.3 involving the 25 and the 122, no further action. Minor contact between the 122 on the 25 when retaking a return position. Lap 6, turn 2 involving the 7 and the 69, a warning for car 7, overtake with contact, position returned. Lap 8, turn 8 between the 137 and the 225, racing incident, contact during close racing, both cars could do better. Lap 10, turn 7, 202 and the 404, 5 seconds for the 404, to pass at the apex, and that's the 5 seconds you see there for Bart Martin.
Yeah, very unfortunate indeed. But it's great to see stewards kind of, not singling out one car entirely, and especially on the lap 8, turn 8, saying both cars could be racing better. So not putting a single party at fault in that one. And a late one just come through there, Kevin, as we finished lap 10, turn 10, involving the 197 and the 48. Once again, a racing incident, minor contact, and that is almost what Ginetta racing is all about. It's a lot of almost like touring car-esque driving where nobody's really at fault. Everybody's kind of rubbing each other equally, and you just kind of end up with just pure racing incidents, and it's only a handful that do get penalised.
Yeah, and then it's a bit of give and take with both the drivers, knowing that the rubbing and racing does happen, as we now see Christopher Straper go very wide out of the last corner with, I think that's Jimenez now being able to re-overtake him. Where's that Maximilian Vetti? Yeah, that's Maximilian Vetti re-overtaking Christopher Straper for the position. So, wow, that's actually very surprising because Vetti was 4 seconds behind after he got hauled up by Stevens. So to see them now racing side by side again, that's a great fight back from Vetti.
Yeah, I'd say either Verstappen has made a mistake or Vede has just found some pace out of nowhere and getting very close in the Montreal hairpin. We nearly saw a repeat of Jimenez and Machushka as both drivers here, Janyo and Mark Elgaard, using all of the grass. We see Janyo there taking to the outside to try and find a little bit of grip to do the undercut, but unfortunately just purely understeered out on maybe the slightly wetter line and has allowed Mark Elgaard to really gain some legs as we see the kind of back end of Christopher Strapen here and Maximilian Verde getting super close. I don't think the splitter of Verstappen could have got any closer to Vede's rear diffuser there.
Yeah, maybe just put a hair that could split those two there, but they have kept it clean so far as they now turn into Oggies, but a very important next right-hander of Williams onto the Bentley straight in order to try and re-overtake that position for Christopher Straper. As we see Byron just in front, wonder what he's going to do, if he's going to try and fight them, but Verstappen has a little bit of a wiggle on exit, and that will see his possibility to overtake fade.
Wiggle is something you don't want. Of course, wiggling does affect your momentum. Instead of your car going forwards, it's now going sideways. In this battle here between Benjamin Harman and Wolf Matushka still has not been settled. Wolf does appear to pull out a slight gap, but then Harman is very, very strong in sectors kind of 1 and 2 up to the Bentley straight. And then essentially Wolf does seem to have the legs in the latter half. So it's great to see these cars kind of playing, that giant game of cat and mouse. You see Harman there using all of the curb and some of the grass, as we see Tor Zidlo now behind Jimenez. Both drivers have pitted, so this is of course for position. Jimenez there with a slightly bad run out of the last turn does allow Tor Zidlo alongside, and Tor Zidlo does have to seem to have the more momentum coming down the center straight up to Richards. Jimenez knows when he's been beat, pulls in behind, allows Tor Zidlo to brake a little bit later than him to get that run through the corner, and Jimenez does become a fading dot in the mirror.
Well, I don't actually think Jimenez had a bad exit. It's just that Marius just has a very good, way better exit. As we saw that on pole, he was, I think, like 6/10 ahead. As we see Lindgren go wide there, good catch by him. But going back to Marius, like he was ahead of everyone in by country mile in qualifying. So I think he just has a very good read on this track. So you can now see the catch. Oh, the counter steering by Lindgren in order to keep that car going straight. It does put him under pressure from the car behind.
Yeah, so replays always catch me out because the mirrors in ACC mirror what the car was seeing last time before we cammed to the replay. So anything you see in the mirrors there, the bright green car of Jimenez is of course not behind, and Phil Roberts finds himself taking a venture out in the parakeet all the way to the wall nearly. Not sure what happened to Phil, but still yet to make his pit stop, so might be the time to do it as we watch here coming out of Oggies down towards Agostini. I believe Matt Stevens ahead in the RPMS Simsport car, and I think Phil just kind of forgot to brake. It seemed like he just zoned out a bit, hit the brake, and by that point it was far too late as he joins the tyre bale out on the grass, and that of course allows Mark Elgaard, Janyo and the Sim brothers cars through, dropping him down unfortunately to P16 since live timing has updated. So very unfortunate for Phil, sees him lose himself a couple of positions to a silver car, Christian Lindgren being one of them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think the parakeet in his car just wanted to grab some seats on the grass there and just forced him to miss. As we see Phil Roberts there go very wide on the on the exit of Nelson. So the parakeet wants more seats in the grass there. Does seem like Phil Roberts is struggling there in that car.
The parakeet has turned more into a parayeet, as I believe our broadcast has possibly slightly broken with Phil Roberts and a race replay overlaid at the top. These are, of course, live pictures you're seeing from Christopher Straper here trying to find a way past Matt Stevens, and Matt Stevens is rightful to defend the position but does go very wide. Not sure if intentionally, nearly spins himself out, giving way to Christopher Straper. Not what you want to be doing. You know, you want to kind of let these pro guys through as, you know, as fast as you can, I guess, but not hamper yourself that much. And now Christoph Verstappen finds himself on to the back of Vede behind. We see Verstappen there, always darting offline and looking to the forecast. Rain is getting heavier in 30 minutes, although we only have just over 19 minutes remaining, so could be interesting to see. Will this track dry out, Kevin?
I think it might get a bit greasy, but it won't dry out fully. We might get a little bit of the start of that extra rain towards the end of the race, but I don't think it will be enough for anyone to consider maybe going on to the dries, looking at the current forecast.
Yeah, definitely so. Not going to be dry enough, I feel, for the dries. However, the wets will begin to struggle if drivers are overdriving them and not trying to pick up as much standing water as they can. And we do have a couple more stewards reports coming through. Incident lap 13, turn 1, involving the 225 and the 77. No further action. Minor contact on the 77. On the 225 during overtake. Not forceful, and the move was already completed by that time. And lap 13, turn 6, involving the 7 and the 225, deemed a racing incident. Of course, Christoph Verstappen on the 7 and the 225 of Phil Roberts. So something I believe we might have missed there along the way. But Alan Manson has pitted. Car ahead, Christian Lindgren. Possibly these guys are going to be working together to try and maybe tow to the back of Jan Yo. So Albin Manson can of course gain another position, and Matt Stevens finally dives into the pit lane. Another silver car to pit, does find himself tumbling down the order, and Phil Roberts still out at the moment, coming under pressure from Konrad Jetson, who has of course pitted as well.
Yeah, and you'd think it might be about time for Phil Roberts to hit that pit lane, having seen how much he struggled through some of the corners already. Just give those tyres a little bit of a rest so he can retake a good position. But yeah, you can see him struggling against the slightly, maybe less overheating tyres of Jetson going through turn 2, as he now seems to go away into the distance, going through Palmer.
Spotted earlier a Jordan Daly off, causing a yellow flag at Nelson and Brundle. Somewhere on the grass we see a big drift ahead from Benjamin Harman, and this allows Torzidlo to now get alongside on the run down to said corner of Nelson and Brundle. The 373 of Torzidlo looks to have already got the move done. A very poor exit from Benjamin Harman, and once again Torzidlo's corner exits proving to be the main game here with the long runs between some of these corners. You really want to maximize every effort you can, but Wolf Matuszka has found himself behind Harman as well. Not sure when that happened, but position change towards the front. Pit stops have been taken, so possibly within there somewhere. But back to Jordan Daly, saw himself off in the grass, causing a yellow earlier on. Apparently forgot to take tyres off his pit stop. So ACC would of course default you to dries, I believe, if I'm right in saying, Kevin. And he would have come out on the slick tyre in damp conditions.
Oh, that would explain something, but also, yes, Wolf Matuszka had taken his pit stop, and that's why he tumbled down the order just a little bit to end up behind Benjamin Harman.
So looking towards the pit stop time, Benjamin Harman from pit in to pit out, 29.001, and Wolf Matuszka finds himself with a 0.409. So about 1.4 gained. They were about a second between them when they came into the pit. So, of course, explains how Heilmann has managed to jump Matuszka, and this would be a fight to keep your eyes on indeed. Albin Manson and the Sim brothers still working together. Christian Lindgren ahead is now getting ever closer to the back of Jan Yao, and Mark Elgaard behind is trying to get a piece of the action, although a little bit too far out at the moment to make any moves. But this man here, who we've not heard a lot from this race, Mikael Sundström, formerly of Team Sweden of the FIA Motorsport Games, finds himself in the lead with quite a comfortable gap to Andy Boardman behind, it looks like.
Yeah, definitely. It seems to be around the 40-second mark, as you can see on my right-hand screen. But it will be interesting to see where he ends up after pit stop, seeing as everyone had around a 30-second pit stop, as we see him now go in. So let's keep an eye on where he ends up once he comes out, as we see Andy Boardman just going through Nelson. So that's going to be interesting to see where he ends up.
Yeah, certainly. Andy Boardman coming through Coram now towards Murray's. Mikael, all he has to do is stop on the jacks, jack it up, dump a litre of fuel in, flop it back down on the apron, and away he goes. And if he can get a speedy stop in, Andy Boardman's stop was at 30.6, and Sundström already moving there. Look to the background, we see Mike Redford, I believe, and Ted Edwards in the Movember-themed Ginetta, and Sundström comfortably to the lead, Kevin.
Yeah, and it was also, he already had the lead before Andy Boardman went into the pits, but he gained 2 seconds as well in the pit stop, being 2 seconds faster. So he's comfortably in the lead right now, and we'll see if that remains with tyre pressures, tyre wear, overheating maybe, see where it ends up.
Yeah, we see Verstappen all the time, all over the kind of offline areas to get as much kind of water into the Pirellis as he can, maybe feeling the effects of them overheating. Matthew Kingston-Lee currently down in P18 on the back of Matthias Byron, ahead just out of shot there to the left behind the scoreboard. Still, this battle is yet to be settled. Richard Phillips in the pits, not sure if he's still in the pits, has come back into the pits as he does leave the pits. I could have sworn he's already taken a stop, Kevin.
I thought he did. I think only Phil Roberts still needs to go, but might be something that happened. Maybe he's like, I'm not surviving this. I need to change tires for different pressures, or maybe there was a drive-through that we didn't spot. We'll have to wait and see what actually happened there.
All important, Kevin. Steward's report. Incident lap 16, turn 9, involving the 25 Wolf Matuszka and Benjamin Heilmann, the 796, where we saw Heilmann slightly tag the back of Wolf, sending him a little bit sideways, backed off the throttle, of course, but then presumed to take the position. Was deemed a forceful overtake on the 25 from the stewards. 5-second penalty for Benjamin Heilmann that will be added to his race time at the end. Of course, here we see the replay side by side, down into Brundle and Nelson. Benjamin with a slight overlap into Nelson, understeers into the quarter slightly of Wolf Matuszka. Matuszka regains it, but then Benjamin Heilmann unfortunately did keep the throttle pinned and did manage to take the position through the bomb hole and Coram. And of course, stewards frowning upon that and deeming a 5-second to the good. So now Heilmann has to really get the hammer down to see if he can claim 5 seconds from Matuszka to keep that position. And looking towards the stewards' reports again, lap 16, turn 10, involving the 796 and the 25. Racing incident, minor contact, which would have been after the incident into Brundle and Nelson. And finally, lap 19, turn 4, involving the 7 and the 89. 15 seconds for car 7. That is Christoph Verstraper takes out the 89, although position return 89, of course, was Vede, which is why, Kevin, we were a little bit confused at how these guys had ended up together. But 15 seconds for the guy in the number 7 car is a huge loss of ground.
Yeah, especially if you look at all the intervals, that at the end of the race is going to drop him heavily down the order. Even though there are not too many pro cars behind, it is going to hurt Christoph at the end there, unless he can really take off now, having dealt with Vedi in not a too nice manner. As we still see Monson trying to get past Lindgren, his teammate, though I'm actually surprised that they haven't maybe switched positions, because you'd think that maybe Lindgren would be a bit faster, as we now look at. Yes.
Can I just say, drift of the day for Ted Edwards here in the Movember themed car. Look at the counter steer on that, Kevin.
Oh, that's juicy. Didn't really help him get to the car in front, but yeah, nice drift indeed. But yeah, going back to Monson and Lindgren, you'd think that it would be helpful for Monson to get ahead of Lindgren so he can try and attack Jan Yo, seeing as Monson is the pro driver of the two within that team.
Yeah, certainly so. And of course, back to the man we're watching here, Ted Edwards. For those of you that missed our opening formation lap, Ted is, of course, sporting a Movember livery. Those of you that are not familiar with Movember or what it is, of course, an annual event involving the growing of mustaches during the month of November to raise awareness of men's mental health and other issues, such as, obviously, testicular cancer and prostate cancer. So anyone that's wanting to deem a mustache, I'm going to challenge you folk to skin your cars for next week. I want to see mustaches everywhere so we can have more mustache talk. And Kevin, any progress on the mustache from November from you?
No, but that's always going to be a struggle from my end.
Yeah, certainly so. In the same boat as yourself, Kevin, very much struggled to grow a mustache. And looking to the scoreboard, Kevin, Christoph Verstraper has jumped from plus 15 to plus 20. And the stewards report states as such: incident on lap 19, turn 4, involving the 7 and the 373. We have a 5 seconds for the number 7. The 7 slows down to return position mid-corner, causing contact. Has been upped to 5 seconds for the second warning of the race. So the Verstappen now really does have to go like a scolded cat as Torzidlo jumps a position on Andy Boardman. That looked like Boardman just opened the door and said, on you go, as we ride on board with Helicam here. Torzidlo very loose out of the previous corner, allows Boardman around the outside, but Torzidlo, of course, with the inside, gets the better grip and the better drive through the corner. Not sure what happened before then, but a change for the middle step of the podium, of course, P2. His teammate Conrad Jetson is, of course, in the battle now for the lead of silver. Christian Lindgren ahead, in the Sim Brothers racing car, and just trying to work out what's happened, because we had Albin Manson and Christian Lindgren together, trying almost to work to the back of Jan Yo, and now we see Jetson on attack of Christian Lindgren coming down into Nelson and Brundle.
Yeah, so he must have gone past Munson at some point, which we didn't see. But yeah, being able to charge that far ahead now, very good for him, as we see Jan Yo to the back of Christopher Straper. Christopher's been in a few incidents this race, so might be smart for Jan to, when he overtakes, to be in a safe position, because Christoph seems to be struggling this race with keeping it clean next to another car.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Christoph is just struggling with the Pirelli tyres slightly. We have seen him pulling off to the side a lot on the straights as he does so here. Jan following his line exactly up to the pit wall. Maybe struggling with temperatures, grip, etc. Catching him out by quite a bit. But all Jan really has to do, if he thinks about it, it's 7.5 minutes to go. We've got Jimenez way up the road. It's again very dicey down into the Montreal hairpin, switching left and right. Jan Yo decides to go to the outside to try and get the undercut done on Verstraper, but of course 20 seconds for Verstraper. He doesn't really have to fight this, Kevin. Jan can just kind of sit here peacefully chilling. He's not really going to be, close enough to get ahead to Vede, although only just up the road there in the front of shot, in the bright green fronted car. And Jan Yo now sizes up a move down into, I believe this is Agostini at the bottom, and a bump from Christoph Verstraper. Christoph, calm down. The stewards are already watching you entirely with beady eyes out of the comms box window, and they're going to be scribbling furiously down on their piece of paper with that contact, and it's definitely not something you want to be doing there, Kevin.
No, he's definitely struggling. Like, either his tyres are overheated, overpressured. He's just losing grip everywhere. We already saw him go and cool down the tyres every opportunity he had. So there must be something wrong there. But yeah, this is not something that he wants to happen, because usually he's quite a clean driver, and to see this happen, it's quite strange.
Yeah, certainly maybe one to forget for Christoph here, as he now comes under fire from Jetson. Jetson now has a 5-second penalty as well. And with Christian Lindgren hot on his heels, Christian doesn't really have to do anything. looking towards the stewards, we have 2 more reports of a lap 19 turn 10 involving the 741 and the 48 racing incident. 741 spins himself out and the 48 cannot unfortunately avoid the contact. But this one here, lap 22 turn 6 involving the 741 and the 123. 5 seconds for the 123 for a forceful overtake on the 741, and that was of course Mark Elgaard the Dane, who is down currently in P13. Obviously Jetson wanting to get a hurry on to try and catch the back of Lindgren, doesn't want to be wasting time sat behind cars that are faster than him. And now Jetson and Verstappen get the darting going down the straight, and the Sim brothers are still locked together. Christian Lindgren, well, of course, leads Alan Manson. Now Jetson comes up the inside, and we're not seeing a switchback like we saw last time with Jan Yo. We see Verstappen there kind of giving up the place freely, not really going too hard on the defensive. Maybe he knows when he has been beaten and just wants to kind of minimize any loss he's now going to receive, Kevin.
Yeah, maybe just struggling a bit too much with the tyres now. Finally figuring out that he can't defend the way he used to, otherwise it will end in contact, so he will just let go, most likely. As we just see something else come through this, I see a drive-through for the 373, about to get a drive-through for taking out Ted. So that's going to be a drive-through for Marius in P2. That's also going to be devastating for him once that comes through.
Yeah, certainly getting a little insight there from the stewards before the kind of official note has gone out. But race replay coming in here. Ted Edwards on Torzidlo. Ted Edwards, of course, ahead, backs up slightly, and Torzidlo just catches the quarter and pit maneuvers Ted out of the Montreal hairpin. Absolutely gutting to see, and that probably explains how Andy Boardman found himself past. And there it is, drive-through penalty for Torzidlo. He's going to be absolutely fuming in the car. Doesn't quite notice it at first, drives past the pit lane. Of course, anyone new to ACC, you do have 3 laps to serve a penalty. Of course, this is now 2 laps as he crosses the line. And towards the top right-hand side of the screen, track has gone to greasy. So it is beginning to dry out. This is the next stage before dry. And of course, these guys now going to be struggling on overheated and worn down Pirelli tyres. Yeah,
they're going to be struggling more and more as the track dries up. Though there is some heavier rain incoming, so maybe near the end of the race we will see that come down and maybe get the track back into damp, as we see this gaggle of cars once again go towards turn 1 of Riches, and we see Lindgren now trying to get past Christopher Strepe towards Jetson to keep that gap closed, so he stays within that 5 seconds as Christopher Strepe has a massive drift there. We see Lindgren now go to the inside of turn 2 Montreal as he takes the position so he can stick close to Jetson and his 5-second penalty to probably take the win in silver.
Yeah, Lindgren has to, make up as much ground as he can to the back of Jetson over the next kind of just under 3 minutes to go. But this fight here, Jan Yo is hotting up on Maximilian Verde. Verde, of course, was the earlier of the pitters of the 2 cars. Verde goes slightly wide, allows the inside open to Jan Yo, and of course that does allow Jan to gain a position, but look to the back. Jetson now looking to get involved, although he's got a 5-second penalty. Any seconds he can muster will matter against Christian Lindgren's charge towards the back of him. 3.3 seconds to the good on the back of Jetson last time by at a timing line. And we do see Christian Lindgren has found a way past Verstappen, and now Alan Manson wanting to get past him as well. Although 20 seconds, of course, we'll see Albin get a very nice gain in time. And it's great to see these cars always sliding out of the Williams corner onto the Bentley straight. I think we need to have a kind of a drift of the day, and my money is on Ted Edwards for drift of the day.
Yeah, from what we've seen, Ted Edwards does seem to have the best drift, though I would want to put in Jordan Daly cutting across the grass. That was also a very good one into the hat for contention.
Yeah, certainly so. And looking towards the top end of the field, Torzidlo finds himself taking the drive-through, has allowed Andy Boardman to go through as he comes towards the traffic light at the end off the pit limiter. Benjamin Heilman now coming down the straight. Wolf Matuszka not going to be close enough. Wolf has really dropped to the back of Heilman after the pit stops here, as we see Torzidlo there jump ahead, still to take P3, and now side by side Matthias Thornberg and I believe Matthias Bayron, the best of the Matthias. Of course, no real honours here, both cars in separate categories. Bayron in the silver and Thornberg in the pro, but it's great to see the Swedes out here having a whale of a time as the clock ticks down to just just over, even a minute to go, and looking to where the leader is. I believe this could potentially be maybe the last lap, if not bordering on it. It's going to be a very close one to the line to see if we do go again. And this man here, Mikael Sundström, has just driven away today, Kevin. Much better than the performance we saw last time out at Zolder. I believe he had an absolute stinker of a race and a slightly mediocre race last time out on Mount Panorama, but very good to see. 28 laps to the good ahead for the leader, but Matcha still fighting with Mark Elgaard. This seems to have kind of raged on all race.
Yes, we've seen Bot Matcha drop, we've seen Elgaard drop. They've been together, they've been away from each other, as we see some boards being knocked over there as Bot Matcha takes the inside line through Agostini, trying to take position away from Elgaard. He does seem to have to drive out of the corner towards Hamilton and takes P13 away from Elgaard.
Apparently, Jordan Daly is classing his Scandi Flick as drift of the day as well, where we saw him Scandi Flick through Brundle and Nelson. Although I saw a lot of turning in rather than opposite locking, so that one's up to the judges to decide. But Ted Edwards very strong on my list of drifts today, as this man here, Konrad Jetson, now to the back of Jan Yo. Unfortunately, no position to be gained, and while we've been saying all of that, Sundström has taken the checkered flag. Your round 4 winner here. Andy Boardman coming in second place. Benjamin Heilman with a 5-second penalty. Watch where he goes down, but I believe he has gained enough to the back of Torzidlo, and I think he has. Torzidlo comes across the line after a drive-through penalty for the Ted Edwards contact. Wolf Matushka, P5. Jose Jimenez comes through in 6th, followed by Jan Yao very closely in P7, and Jetson in P8, although 5-second penalty to him as well. Maximilian Vede, Christian Lindgren crossed the line. Christopher Straper with a 20-second penalty isn't going to be very pretty when we get the final results. Albin Manson, Bart Matcher, Mark Elgaard still to come across the line. This battle here between I believe that was Phillips and Thornberg still going on through the final penultimate corner. As we flick back here, the RPMS Simsport car not close enough to make a move on the Pink Panther car, although Matthias Thornberg versus Matthias Bayron can confirm Thornberg is the better Matthias Swede we have on the grid today, and the gap for Phillips closed up an awful lot there. It looked like Thornberg was almost going to lose a place as Bayron finds himself with a 5-second penalty too. Looking towards the stewards, some late reports coming in to lap 24, turn 3, involving the 24 and the 69, a warning for avoidable contact. And this one here, the incident on lap 25, turn 2, involving the 555 and the 100. The 100 squeezes and forces the 55 off, causing them to lose a position. That was Matthew Kingston Lee. And I believe Phil Roberts here is the last man possibly to cross the line. Coming across the line in the Parakeet car to take a P20, and there we see the results shuffle on the side. We see a big drift from Phil Roberts into turn 1, turns into it rather than out of it, but still a contender for drift of the day and into the outside wall there. And what a race, Kevin. That was some great stuff, despite a very calm start compared to what we saw at Zolder. Some great fights up and down the field to keep track of.
Yeah, definitely. Though there were near the end a bit more incidents than I thought there would be, seeing how the race started. But yeah, overall very good race, up and down the grid. Congratulations to Michael Sundström for having, well, probably a very boring race, but a very strong race for him indeed. Andy Bortman P2 and Marius P3. Congrats to all the podium.
Yeah, certainly so. And the big loser, of course, Christoph Verstappen, with the 20-second penalty, finds himself down in P14 overall. I believe possibly P12, judging by the results of the silver cars ahead of him. And Matthew Kingston Lee finds himself kind of ahead of Thornberg, and then a big block of silvers. Unfortunately, a couple of cars that did not finish, Joe Dorber, Nicholas Nordqvist, Jordan Daly, and Nat Shirley. Not sure what happened to Nat Shirley 3 laps in, but was a car that was looking very racy indeed at the previous few rounds. Sad to see Nat not making it to the end, but tricky conditions up and down the grid. Some great fights to be had by everyone, and I believe this is going to probably shuffle the championship again, something rotten.
Yeah, and we've just had one post-race incident come through. That 26 turn 4 between the 48 and the 7, no further action, minor contact. There might be 1 or 2 more coming through post-race. But I think definitely with the win for Michael Sundström, he will be shooting himself up the rankings. And well, we'll see next week how far he's actually gone up.
Yeah, certainly so. It was some great racing up and down the grid. Mikael Sundström of Team Sweden from the FIA Motorsport Games. Congratulations to him. Andy Boardman, P2. Torzidlo, P3. And Heilman, P4. Machuska, P5. Jimenez, 6. Yo, 7. Vade 8th, Jetson 9th, and Christian Lindgren in 10th. As we see the race winner car here, the nearly on pace 899 Ginetta. Great color scheme. Really like how it fades from, kind of pink to red to brown to kind of orange at the beginning. And it's great to see some custom liveries coming afoot and a slight bit of advertising on the back of the Ginetta there with a twitch.tv link. But however, cloudy scenes at Snetterton. Some great work by Ryan Mawson from behind the cameras as always. And still a few more racing incidents coming through after the checkered flag has dropped. But of course, tonight, that will be all we really have time for. As always on RCI Mondays, some exciting racing and obviously a quick message from our partners. We of course have AK Informatica as Ryan Mawson slightly falls through the floor. AK Informatica for providing our server solutions at RCI. However, they also do provide high-end hardware, peripherals and accessories including sim gear. driver61.com. You can of course get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code with a link in the description below and heading on over to driver61.com. And lastly but not least, Fanatec, your one-stop shop for all the best sim racing equipment on the market. I believe they've had an offer this week out on the on one of the direct drive units, so you are looking for a new base, be sure to head over on there. You can, of course, use our affiliate link in the description below, and it won't cost you a penny, but it, of course, does help us with the running costs here at RCI. And, of course, a big thank you to everyone that has watched the broadcast tonight. Of course, without you guys sat here, it would not be much point. But hopefully you have enjoyed all the action myself, Kevin Boss, Ryan Mawson, and, of course, all our stewards have brought to you tonight. No overtime from the stewards, a relatively clean race indeed. And, of course, next up on the RCI calendar, you want to be tuning in on Wednesday, where we see not Wednesday, Thursday. This week begins our new championship at Suzuka for round 1 of the GT4 and TCX multi-class race. Some regular RCI names in there you're going to recognize, so be sure to tune in at RCI TV. Of course, a like, a subscription, the bell icon, all that good stuff that, of course, helps our channel here at RCI on YouTube grow to more audiences to hopefully bring more and more events that are broadcast from the virtual world of Assetto Corsa Competizione. So from myself, John Dalton, from Ryan Mawson behind the cameras, and alongside me, Kevin Boss in the commentary box, and all the live stewards, we hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see you all in the next one. Take care.